This is History Myths and Myth Conceptions. And today's myth conception is the Trojan War. The Trojan War is the subject of many Greco-Roman myths and epic poetry. Most prominently, as we all know, it is a setting for Homer's The Iliad, quite probably the oldest existing complete piece of long-form literature we have. So did this Trojan War really happen? When, where, why, and who won? It is almost impossible to know for sure. But we can be absolutely certain that there were conflicts in this area at this exact time frame that involved people from the Greek world. And we know that ancient authors, including Herodotus, the father of history, and Thucydides, the real father of history, they all believed that the Trojan War was an actual historical event, not just a myth. And they clearly understood that there was a lot of fiction built around this event in the centuries after the war. But for them, the war was real. Historians are trying hard to figure out when and where the main inspiration for the Trojan War happened. But it is generally believed that it happened somewhere like 6 or 7 centuries before Herodotus, who lived in the 5th century BC. It is possible that this conflict, or a series of conflicts, involved a certain city that Heinrich Schliemann excavated in present-day Turkey, one of the settlements buried in the hill of Hisarlik. This hill is located near the modern city of Çanakkale, which occupies more or less the same location as the ancient city of Abydos, a prominent city in its own way. Because it is a place which allows you to control the Hellespont, also known as the Strait of the Dardanelles. These ruins from different periods that we can find at the location of Hisarlik are usually identified as Troy or Ilium, but we cannot be 100% sure that it is actually Troy. There are serious reasons to suspect that this is not the location we're looking for. And there are theories that in fact Troy was somewhere in the area around Pergamum. Or maybe Pergamon itself was in fact Troy. It is located approximately 200 kilometers or 120 miles further south of Hisarlik. So this is one of the major misconceptions. We don't know for sure where ancient Troy was located. Now we're moving to the causes of the conflict that inspired the work of Homer. If we identify Troy with the hill of Hisarlik, then the causes are quite obvious. And they don't really include abductions of women from Sparta. If we identify Troy with some area around Pergamum, it is slightly less straightforward, but in many ways it still tells us a comparable story. A story of the control of strategic locations. The Troy candidate near present-day Çanakkale, as we told earlier, quite literally controls the Strait of the Dardanelles. This strait, just like its brother, the Bosphorus in ancient Byzantium, is a place of huge strategic importance. This is the entrance to the Black Sea, and also a place where you can easily cross from Europe to Asia and from Asia to Europe, which, for instance, has been done by Xerxes, exactly at Abydos. Politics and warfare are mostly dictated by geography. The straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, are so important that the control over them sparked numerous conflicts. The control was absolutely critical for the Greek states and for Byzantium. It was critical for the Ottomans. It was a long-term strategic goal for Russia, for obvious geopolitical reasons. It is safe to say that the Trojan War was mostly about the straits and the control of the adjacent area, not about the Spartan princes who probably either never existed or wasn't present at Troy at all. If we read Thucydides, he didn't care much about the mythological aspect. He quite bluntly says that the war wasn't about this oath of the Greek or proto-Greek kings about the marriage of Helen. It was about the growing power of Agamemnon. He also mentions that the whole scale of the war was inflated by the poets and the number of the allied Greek troops was relatively small, if you consider the state of ancient Greece in this period of history. And these troops had serious problems with the supplies. They had to do some farming in the area and participate in the pirate raids, so they could, just have something to eat. What was probably more important is the aftermath of this war, which led to numerous wars back in the Greek homeland, and, in the end, to what the historians call the Greek Dark Ages, which followed the fall of the Mycenaean civilization. Herodotus, on the other hand, wasn't really interested in the real Trojan War much. He discussed it a bit, but mostly from a somewhat mythological perspective. Thucydides used the Trojan War in his introduction to the history of the Peloponnesian War. For Herodotus, it was a part of the build-up to the main topic of his own work, the Persian Wars. And he was talking about the conflicts between Europe and Asia, mostly through the lens of abductions of mythological women, including Helen. And his conclusion was that Helen probably was never present in Troy. Otherwise, Priam and the Trojans would have given her back to the Hellenes immediately. But they just couldn't do this. For him, Helen was in Egypt, because he believed in this myth of the phantom Helen, the eidolon of Helen. In this context, we should also remember the works of Dio Chrysostom, who lived in the Roman Empire during the reign of the Flavian dynasty, and later the Antonine dynasty. Dio Chrysostom wasn't really a historian, he was a philosopher. One of his discourses is mostly dedicated to the story of the Trojan War and the works of Homer. And he was pretty sure that Helen couldn't really be the cause of war. If anything, she was probably a wife of Alexander, Paris, and she was married with the full consent of her family. Otherwise, there is no logical explanation why her closest relatives, brothers Castor and Pollux, had absolutely no objections and never participated in the Trojan campaign. What is important here is that Dio Chrysostom is one of the few people who actually believed that the Trojan War was won by the Trojans, because the immediate aftermath of the war is struggle between various Greek states, followed by the Dark Ages. At the same time, Trojans start founding colonies here and there, including Italy and Epirus. So at least you can understand the logic behind this seemingly strange conclusion of Dio Chrysostom. As you can see, the actual prototype of the Trojan War is surrounded by contradicting opinions since the period of antiquity. We have some of the answers, we have theories, but we don't know for sure. In short, what we know is the ancients believed that the Trojan War was an actual historical event. And it probably was. It was a conflict or a series of conflicts between the Mycenaean civilization and the inhabitants of the region around the Hellespont, or a little bit to the south of the Hellespont. And the main focus of the conflict was most probably the straits and control of the trade. The immediate aftermath was a struggle between the Hellenes and a period of demise in the Greek heartland, which can be interpreted as a defeat of the Hellenes. Although much later, as we know, the Hellenes colonized the coast of Asia Minor, or Anatolia, and various Greek states controlled the straits and founded more colonies around the coast of the Black Sea. Not only the northern coast of present-day Turkey, but also the coast of present-day Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and Russia. So the idea of Dio Chrysostom can be invalidated.